Anyhow, we're in for a real treat today. Our speaker is Jason Vaughn. I'm just going to read a little bit about him. He's from South Carolina, native with the soul of a Texan, as he said. South Carolinians are good people. He's known as a twisted conservative from his podcast and radio appearances because along with being a conservative activist, he's also a professional balloon twister. I don't see any today that you brought, but he's good at that. And so some say twisted more describes his sense of humor. He's been politically active since he was a sophomore in high school, so he got wisdom very early, and founded the college Republican chapter at his school. He has worked numerous campaigns over the year, and he founded Pro-Life Texas in 2013. And at the end, I want all of you to go up and sign. If you've got a sheet back there where you can sign up on the back table there, if you can sign up to get his things that are sent on the internet about pro-life, and so it's a good organization. He's got one of the largest social media outreaches in Texas today, and his passion is training activists to work for campaigns and legislation that promote life and liberty. What he's really going to tell us today is how to talk to liberals, and that's difficult, because liberals use emotion, they're uneducated, and they're extremely stiff-necked. Every time I read my Bible on that, and you read the phrase stiff-necked, for the Israeli people, I think, oh, the liberals are just the same way. But anyhow, if we could give them a big round of applause and thank him for being here. And Jason, come on up.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start off with a story, because that's actually what today's about. It's going to be about telling a better story. When I was 6 years old, I lived in Lawrence, South Carolina. Now, if you're a native, that's Lawrence. But it's a small town just south of Greenville with a traditional small town square with the courthouse in the center and the small shops around. Well, we had a very special small shop come in known as the Redneck Shop. That's fine. I'm pretty redneck myself. Unfortunately, what also happened to be in this redneck shop was a KKK museum in honor of the KKK. Now, I was 6 years old. I didn't know much about race relations at the time. My grandfather, sadly, was in the KKK, but my mother stood for something else. And we went, so there was a KKK rally on the square to support said shop, and then there was an anti-rally. Me and my mother took me and my baby sister at the time. I believe I was about 6 years old, and we were the only white people there that I remember. I can even tell you where we stood. It was right in front of the little one theater place, and we stood there because I didn't know. I didn't know why we were there. I know that over on the side there were people mocking the people that were against it. And I know that even people, a bunch of the black folks there came up to my mom as well and said, "Why are you here? This is not your fight." And then people that approved of it or didn't think anything of it came up to her and said, "Why are you here? This is not your fight." And every single person, she said the same thing. She said, "Because you stand for what's right." That was what I was raised on, is that you stand for what's right. Even if you're the only one standing sometimes, you stand for what's right. And that is what has taken me from being a sophomore getting involved in politics to today running Pro-Life Texas, is because you stand for what's right, sometimes even when you're the only one standing. And I tell you that story because when people ask why I'm involved in politics, that's the story I tell them. Because when you talk about why you're involved in politics, why are you here? Is it because you want limited government? Is it because of those things? Maybe, but why are you for limited government? Why are you for secure borders? You see, people don't connect with numbers. We want to give, anybody here like to give people facts? Anybody here try to give people facts and they don't want to listen? People don't connect with facts. You can hear about 3 facts at a time. I can talk about the heartbeat of a fetus starting at 6 weeks. I can talk about fingerprints. I can talk about all of these dates and times. I can talk about 55 million abortions since Roe v. Wade. But people cannot connect with that because ultimately that is not how we were designed to connect. We were designed to connect through stories. This is how Christ connected with his people. If you remember, Christ gave parables for when he wanted to connect something. He didn't come out straight out and say it. He didn't say, well, if you do this and this and this and this. I mean, Christ was never about a list of rules. He was always about a story to let you understand what the principles were. Let me give you an example. Mass murderers. Pol Pot. Anybody? You guys know Pol Pot? See, we can understand somebody killing one person. We can, and we're horrified by that. We can understand somebody being a serial killer. But you start getting up to somebody killing millions and millions of people, and we can't even comprehend that. Our minds cannot go there. Once we reach those numbers, we just shut off. It's the same thing with our troops. You guys remember when Paul Walker died, the actor? And everybody kind of started making memes and was talking about it. And one of the comments a lot of people in our circles would say is, why are you so concerned about that when we have so many, an actor dying when nobody mentions our soldiers dying? But you guys remember reading comments like that? And I'm going to tell you why. It's because we were able to connect with Paul Walker on a certain level because we knew his story. He was a single person. Same thing with any actor, Tim Tebow or any other celebrity. We're able to connect with them because we start to understand their story. When someone is nameless, when someone is faceless, we cannot connect with them. And if you come up to people talking to them about politics and you only talk about issues and you only talk about these specific areas, they're not going to connect with you because all you are is a nameless, faceless person. You know, some of my, I get a hard time from some people in the Republican Party because I'm probably one of the few conservatives that has made a point to have a lot of liberal friends. I do it for you guys. I do it for you. It's tough because I have friends that are actually communists, and what we do is we connect and we have these deep conversations, and we're able to actually talk because we go back to story. And I want to share with you a video real quick. If you can get up that first video, and you're not going to like it, you're going to get mad, okay? But I want you to listen to this and think about. This is the moment. In 2004, how many of you, who here watched the Democratic Convention in 2004? Who here was involved in politics in 2004? I know quite a few came in later on. Those of us that were involved in 2004, I was leading college Republicans. I watched this and I said, that man will run for president. Watch this.
It is a particular honor for me because, let's face it, my presence on this stage is pretty unlikely. My father was a foreign student, born and raised in a small village in Kenya. He grew up herding goats, went to school in a tin roof shed. His father, my grandfather, was a cook, a domestic servant to the British. But my grandfather had larger dreams for his son. Through hard work and perseverance, my father got a scholarship to study in a magical place, America, that shone as a beacon of freedom and opportunity to so many who had come before. While studying here, my father met my mother. She was born in a town on the other side of the world, in Kansas. Her father worked on oil rigs and farms through most of the Depression. The day after Pearl Harbor, my grandfather signed up for duty, joined Patton's army, marched across Europe. Back home, my grandmother raised a baby and went to work on a bomber assembly line. After the war, they studied on the GI Bill, bought a house through FHA. and later moved west, all the way to Hawaii in search of opportunity. And they too had big dreams for their daughter. A common dream born of two continents. My parents shared not only an improbable love, they shared an abiding faith in the possibilities of this nation. They would give me an African name, Barak, or Blessed, believing that in a tolerant America, your name is no barrier to success. They imagined me going to the best schools in the land, even though they weren't rich, because in a generous America, you don't have to be rich to achieve your potential. They're both passed away now. And yet I know that on this night, they look down on me with great pride. They stand here, and I stand here today, grateful for the diversity of my heritage, aware that my parents' dreams live on in my two precious daughters. I stand here knowing that my story is part of the larger American story, that I owe a debt to all of those who came before me, and that in no other country on earth is my story even possible.
Now, I know that it's very difficult to do, but disconnecting
Tonight is a particular honor for me.
Disconnecting everything else you know about President Obama, how many of you can agree with the principles of that story? And for those of you still doubting whether you do or not, I'm going to share with you almost a very, very similar story by somebody you do agree with. If we can get that next one up. Because this is what I want to get to, is when we understand that stories are how we connect with people.
And as Jackie
Here we go. Let's go on and play it.
mentioned a minute ago, I grew up in Cuba under a strong military oppressive dictatorship. So as a teenager, I found myself involved in a revolution. I remember during that time a young charismatic leader rose up talking about hope and change. His name was Fidel Castro. And, we all followed him. We thought he was going to be our liberator. As a result of being involved in the revolution, I was imprisoned, I was tortured, but by the grace of God, I was able to leave Cuba on a student visa and came to the greatest country on the face of the earth. Went to Austin, Texas, got a job as a dishwasher and paid my way to the University of Texas. And then in 1959, when Castro took over, I went back to Cuba. And I got the shock of my life. So I came back to the United States, totally disillusioned, but glad and thanking God for the opportunity that this country offered me. And just I decided that I was in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and this is the land of opportunity, and with hard work and determination, I could achieve any dream. And so within a few years, after graduating from college, I had my own business in oil and gas exploration. And then in 1976, I was shocked again when I saw a government started in this country instituting socialist policies, which I very easily recognized because of my experience in Cuba. So I became very active in the Reagan campaign. I joined an organization called the Religious Roundtable, a Judeo-Christian group that was very instrumental in helping Reagan get elected. So when my son was 9 years old, our conversation around the dinner table centered on politics every day. I remember over and over I would ask him, you know, Ted, when I faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to come to. If we lose our freedoms here, where are we going to go? There is no place to go. This is the bastion of freedom in the world. And this is why we have to fight to protect the freedom we have. And as Jackie mentioned a minute ago,
It's on.
I grew up in Cuba.
It's on loop for some reason. Yeah, if you want to click over here and take it off of loop, right here. Oh, there you go. All right. Very similar stories, right? Very similar stories, especially if that had been from, if you'd have considered that from President Obama's father. So what happens? So what happens between those stories, though? So you want to talk to a liberal. Now, this is East Texas. You guys probably don't have that many people to talk to. I'm like, you guys have it pretty easy over here, you know? Unless you go to a college campus, you know, you're kind of okay. But if you want to talk to somebody, what you need to do is you need to start by telling them why. What is your story? And if you want to get to your story, then ask why. Why does it matter? If you don't believe stories matter, think of Bambi. Some of you, might actually remember when Bambi came out. It's credited with creating the most gun hunting laws in history. Bambi, because, oh, poor Bambi, mom was shot. That movie created laws around our country. That's the power of story. Another one, somebody mentioned fracking earlier. So I'm in Denton. And I worked very hard against the fracking ban in Denton. It's the only, sadly, it's the only victory liberals had last election. And trust me, I saw every article on it. It was worldwide. They talked about this little town in Texas actually managed to ban fracking. And if you're there, you understand it's a college town and it's not that big a deal. But what was going on? What was the rhetoric going on to ban fracking? On one side, here's what you had. You had a mayor who, from another city in Texas, I can't remember where, that said that his kids had bloody noses, and his kids' noses were bleeding, and he blamed it on fracking. And over here, you had my side of the argument who said, yeah, but we get a lot of tax revenue. Doesn't really work, does it? You can't argue bloody noses with kids and tax revenue. There's a story there that mattered. Now, how could we have argued that? Any ideas? What's a story we could have shared?
Somebody got a job.
Somebody has a job?
Some of that money would help pay for schools for children.
Schools for children? Firemen? What?
Environment.
Oh, environment. One of the things we...
People go back in and get what's already...
Thank you. Yes. One of the things we could have done and should have been doing is showing the 139 people in town that were given jobs because of fracking and talked about their families and their lives and how this had created something for them and how we were putting them out of business. But we didn't. And a lot of times that's what conservatives want to do. We want to go to the facts because we think that's what changes minds. But that doesn't even really change our minds most of the time. We love rhetoric. We love a good story. So if you want to tell your story, learn to tell the why. Where's Ernie at? Ernie, you were going through some of your different aspects earlier. Limited government. So if you want to go to someone and say, I'm for limited government, okay, why? Why are you for limited government?
I don't like to pay taxes
Because you don't like to pay taxes, why not?
because they spend it on things that I don't like.
Yeah, but why not? See, and this is, why is a hard question, isn't it? Why is a hard question, but it is the most important question you'll ever ask when trying to talk to a liberal, or anyone for that matter. Why? And the more times you can ask why, usually it takes 3 times. Usually it'll take 3 times to get to the real answer that will connect to almost anyone. You know why I'm a conservative? I'm a conservative because I believe in family. Because my family is important to me. And I want them to be safe, and I want them to be protected, and I want them to build the life that they want. I'm a conservative because I believe in individualism. That I believe that every one of us was created in the image of God, and that we can go out and that we can honor Him, and that we can be the specific type we can do as individuals. Something that we cannot do as a collective. I'm a conservative because I think that people are sinful. You know, my Bible tells me that, and I will be honest, for me, this is a lot of faith issues. So, but for me, you know, I believe that every man is out for himself, and that you do not want a collective power base, because if you have one evil person in control with a lot of power, that's worse than a lot of evil people with a little bitty power. So why are you a conservative? Why are you a Republican? Or why are you here? Why do you do the things that you do? Why do you give up a lunch once a month or twice a month on a Friday to come listen to guys like me speak? Get to the bottom of that, and then you'll know how to connect with a liberal. Then you'll know how to connect with a neighbor. Then you'll know how to collect with a millennial. Then you'll know how to collect with a Hispanic. Then you'll know how to collect with a black person. Then you'll know how to collect with an Asian. You'll know how to connect with anyone, because at our core basis, we all have those principles, because God has written. I'm a Baptist preacher, okay? I'm just going to start preaching there in a second. But at our basis, God has written on us His law, and so we understand that. And if we can get to those principles, when we understand and get to those base principles, then we will connect. And that's the starting point. That's not how you change minds, but that is the starting point of how you change minds. You know, and this is also good for particular issues. Yeah, if we can get up our next video. How many of you know Susanna Gradia Hook? Nobody? A few people? Okay. Former congresswoman. She's the woman that is credited with getting us the CHL 20 years ago in Texas. After the Luby shooting. Who remembers that? All right, this is her testimony. This is her testimony and her story. This is why we have a CHL today. Concealed handgun license. Number 3, Second Amendment.
Let me make sure that you understand I'm not here representing the NRA. I'm not even a member. Okay? Secondly, I'd like to say that in your opening statements, you commented specifically on my testimony, saying that basically it had nothing to do with this issue. And I had to chuckle, because then I noticed you had Mr. Brady up here, who was hit not with an assault weapon, but with a .22 caliber revolver. So getting beyond that, I didn't grow up in a house with guns. I don't hunt. I personally abhor hunting. But I was given a gun by a friend when I was 21 to carry in my purse for self-defense, and I was taught how to use it. A couple of years ago, my parents and I went to a cafeteria in Texas on a bright sunny day. We weren't in a dark alley where we weren't supposed to be. And as you all know the story, this madman drove his truck through the window, and he began shooting. Well, immediately, my father and I got down on the floor and put the table up in front of us. And this guy kept shooting. And you're thinking, what could it be? Is it a robbery? That's the first thing that generally comes to mind. And he keeps shooting. It took me a good 45 seconds to realize that this man wasn't there to commit a robbery. He wasn't there for a hit. He was there to simply shoot as many people as he possibly could. Now, I'd like to make something clear. I hear all this talk about how many bullets can go in a clip. I've been there. I can tell you it doesn't matter. It takes 1 second to switch out a clip. You can have 1 bullet or 100 bullets. It doesn't matter, guys. I've been there. He goes, stump, stump. Just like that. That's not enough time to rush a man. I promise you. When I finally realized what was occurring, I thought, I got him. And I reached for my purse. He was maybe 12 feet away. You know, is it possible my gun could have jammed? Sure. Is it possible I could have missed? Sure. But I can tell you I've hit much smaller targets at much greater distances. But then I realized that a couple of months earlier I had made the stupidest decision of my life. I took my gun out of my purse and left it in my car. Because as you well know, in the state of Texas, it's sometimes a felony offense to carry a gun in your purse. I can tell you that I'm not mad at the guy that did this. As he continued, it was obvious that he was a madman. My father, at that point, said, I just got to do something. I've got to do something. He's going to kill everybody in here. And he rushed the man. No way. This guy turned, shot him in the chest. He went down, was obviously mortally wounded. For whatever reason, that made the man change directions and go off to my left. Shortly thereafter, someone at the back of the restaurant broke out a window. When I saw what looked like an opportunity to escape, I turned around and I grabbed my mother by the shirt and I said, come on, we've got to run, we've got to get out of here. And then my feet grew wings and I was out the back window. As soon as I got out, I realized that my mother had not followed me out. And as I learned from the police officers, she had crawled over to where my father was and cradled him until the guy got back around her, put the gun to her head. She looked up at him, put her head down, and he pulled the trigger. My parents had just had their 47th wedding anniversary. She wasn't going anywhere. As I mentioned, I'm not really mad at the guy that did this. And I'm certainly not mad at the guns that did this. They didn't walk in there by themselves and pull their own triggers. The guy that did it was a lunatic. That's like being mad at a rabid dog. I'm mad at my legislators for legislating me out of the right to protect myself and my family. I would much rather be sitting in jail with a felony offense on my head and have my parents alive. As far as these so-called assault weapons, you say that they don't have any defense use. You tell that to the guy that I saw on a videotape of the LA riot, standing up on his rooftop, protecting his property and his life from an entire mob with one of these so-called assault weapons. Tell me that he didn't have a legitimate self-defense use. Just one final statement. I've been sitting here getting more and more fed up with all of this talk about these pieces of machinery having no legitimate sporting purpose, no legitimate hunting purpose. People, that is not the point of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not about duck hunting. And I know I'm not going to make very many friends saying this, but it's about our rights, all of our rights to be able to protect ourselves from all of you guys up there.
Who here would tell that woman she can't carry her gun? No one here, but not even the state senators and state representatives are willing to do that. That testimony, that story, that horrifying story is why we have a CHL. Now, didn't go far enough. It ended up being the most expensive CHL in the nation. We are second only to New York City, by the way. So work on that. But that's the story that got the ball rolling so that many of us can have at least some form of protection today. That's the power of story. And that's why you have to be willing to share your story. Between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5 women in the United States have had an abortion. 1 in 3 and 1 in 5. I don't know. Some of you women in here may have. First, let me say there's forgiveness if you have. Secondly, let me say, share your story. I want to share a story with you. This was sent to me. Running Pro-Life Texas is one of the hardest things I've ever done. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done because not only am I daily faced with the 60 to 70,000 babies killed in the womb in Texas every year, I'm also faced with those that don't care. Let's see if I can find this story real quick. Apologize, this may take 1 second. I say that and then I might not be able to find it at all. Anyway, I shared a video recently, and I got an email from a woman. 19 years ago, she was sitting in an abortion clinic. 19 years ago, she was sitting ready to have an abortion. And by the grace of God, she got up and for some reason decided to reschedule. And she never went back. And her words are a lot more touching than mine. But she walked out, and today she's had to tell her 18-year-old daughter that she almost aborted her. Those are interesting stories. What's more interesting is when I hear from fathers. Believe it or not. Now, oftentimes, men, we are the reason women get abortions. It is usually a boyfriend or a husband that takes their wives or girlfriends to the abortion clinic. But every now and then I'll receive a word from a man whose from a man whose wife went to get an abortion, and he said he was, until that point, he was very pro-choice. He wasn't pro-choice. He was apathetic towards it. But when he realized that his wife came within moments of killing his child, that's what made him pro-life. I've talked to many, many women, especially since HB2, that have had abortions. And probably the most healing thing they've ever done is share their story. So men, women, whether it's abortion or whether it's immigration or whether it's finance, I am asking you, be willing to share your story because your story changes lives. Don't talk about the easy things. The issues are easy. Talking about saying, I'm pro-Second Amendment, I want to keep my guns, that's easy to do. Standing in front of people and saying that as a young boy you were raped, my story. That's my story. One of them. Saying that you were raped as a young boy and you never want to feel defenseless again. That's powerful. It's not just mine, it's many people's stories, many women's stories. So what's your story? What's your story that changes lives? What's your story that tells why you're here? What's your story that the world needs to hear? What's your story that will change minds, that will change hearts? What's your story that will save this nation? It's not where I was planning on going. Sorry. But when you tell your story, so that's the story of me. That's the story of you. That's a personal story. Then you have to learn to tell the story of us. After you've learned to tell your story, what do you have to do? You have to invite other people along. Who are you inviting along with your story? Who are you inviting to be part of it? Many of us had the opportunity 2 summers ago, 2013. Many of you here in Smith County. Who came down to the Capitol? You guys had the biggest group show up that I've ever seen. And I thought it was a mob. Actually, at first, until I saw the blue, we just heard, you guys were like stampeding. It was scary. We were like, what is going on? We don't know. Because I'd been there for about 2 weeks at this point when Smith County showed up. And I'm like, the cavalry is here, hallelujah. So I appreciate you guys showing up. And it was just a fantastic day. But that was the story of us. That's when we got to get together. And it's events like these that we get together and we get to share our story together. And we get to invite people along. I'm going to share a video with you. This is, you'll know several people in it. I think several of you are probably in it. Emily Nicholson is in it, I know for sure. You guys know Patriot Academy? Quite a few of you. Rick Green asked me to create this video. This is from that. Real quick, I did skip this part of what I was saying is, remember when you're sharing stories, you're also sharing stories with the images you share. This is President Obama passing gun legislation. You see who he's got with him? Mix of varieties, children, minorities. This is President Bush passing partial birth abortion legislation. A bunch of old white people, a bunch of old white men. All right? So that's not what I got into, but when you share your images, also make sure, and when you set things up, make sure you're sharing the right story as well. But let's get to the other video. This is HB2. This is what would happen during that. Go ahead.
This is the place for the boys in Texas to be heard.
What will people say of me when I'm only just a memory? When I'm home where my soul belongs. Was it right that no one else would show up? Was that Jesus to the least of us? Was my worship more than just a song? I wanna live my life and give it all I have. So the earth is standing next to you. If love is who I am, then this is where I stand. Recklessly
apologize. You should have been able to hear what was being said. You should have been able to hear what was being said when we were speaking on there. I'm not sure what happened with the sound on that. But thank you guys for those of you that showed up. Because what was interesting, that was the Let Texas Speak rally. Originally, can I just share with you just how good my God is? Just what had happened was we were planning a traditional rally. We were going to have Governor Perry speak and General Abbott and others come and speak. And we found out that Texas Right to Life and CWA and several other fantastic organizations were already doing that the next night. They had it was really cool. We got to partner with them for their thing. But we wanted to do something different. And the Let Texas Speak rally ended up being Texans coming in, and they would hold up, we started off, everybody would hold up their driver's license, and they would share their why. They would share their story of why they were pro-life. And my friend that helped me organize that, he was the guy that was in the beginning, Thomas Umstadt. He kept telling me, Jason, this will never work. We will go maybe an hour, but I will give it a shot, because I convinced everybody else. I'm kind of good at talking people into things they don't want to do. But we went 9 hours. 9 hours. Every now and then it would be kind of a lull, and we wouldn't have anything going on, and what would happen is everybody would get together and we would pray and we would sing, and all of a sudden we had a new list of people. And here's what's amazing. We never lost control of the microphone. No, we couldn't hear what was going on. It actually sounded a lot like that. All we heard was protesters. But we were actually live broadcasting and went into hundreds of people, were able to see it at home. And if you guys remember the Hail Satan moment of HB2? That's that. That was that moment. And that was the moment that changed the conversation. Because even your basic Texan, even if they are pro-choice or apathetic or think they don't really care, the last thing they want to do is be around people that are chanting Hail Satan. We changed the story, and we told our stories. And that's what Pro-Life Texas does. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm about helping people do. I hope some of this made sense. I did skip around more than I planned to today. I'm used to being able to control my media from here. But tell your why. Learn to tell your why. Learn to tell your story, because your story will impact people. We're going to go to some questions. I'm going to end it so we get out of here at 1.
Am I on? Can y'all hear me? Okay. How can we get the message to Hispanic Catholics that conservatives are pro-life?
One of our greatest failures of HB2 was not having media out. We should have been pumping media into the Rio Grande Valley at that point. Because if you saw the video, I don't know how well you could see the protesters. They were all white college students. You've got your pro-life people, and it's all it's black, it's white. We had them chanting, "Healthcare is a right, not just for the rich and white," while a black pastor was speaking. I had the best laugh out of that. Some people were coming up to me and, "Oh, I wish they'd be quiet. I wish they'd just let us have our rally." And I'm like, no, this is fantastic. Because I realized what was going out, because what you were seeing didn't really match their story. So if you want to tell them, you got to tell them you're pro-life. You've got to go up, and that's where you start at. Too often, we want to start with where we disagree with people. How many, do you guys have, I don't know, it's East Texas. Do you guys have a Cinco de Mayo event? Go to your Cinco de Mayo event. Meet people. Have fun. Cinco de Mayo events are a lot of fun. Start a conversation. Find out what matters to them, and it will start with family. And family is a great jumping off point to talk about pro-life.
Please paraphrase your speech into 3 action steps that we must take.
Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. And then tell your story.
How do we sell school vouchers?
Well, that's good. Find people impacted by school vouchers. Find families. Let them tell their story. Who here's homeschooled? Yeah. Paramans. Anybody else? That's your best people. I'm actually going to spend the next 2 weeks with the Texas Homeschool Coalition. I stay at their house when I'm in Austin. It's kind of great. It saves me a lot of money. And but they're the most impactful people to talk about vouchers. It's finding the people that are impacted most by vouchers, and then finding the minorities impacted most by. White people are the least supportive of vouchers. White people are the least. We're 56% supportive of vouchers according to the last survey I saw. Hispanics are the most. They're in the mid 60s, and black people are around 60%. We're the lowest in vouchers by far. It makes no sense. Eddie Lucio, I love Senator Lucio. I mean, he's a Democrat, and we disagree on like 98% of things, but he is extremely pro-life and extremely pro-voucher. So I love that man. Like those are the 2 points that me and him we can talk about all day long. But not that I know him personally or anything, but he understands, especially being in the Rio Grande Valley, how important those things are.
What is the matter you refer to that says Texas was second to New York?
CHL. Local debt as well, but CHL cost. It's $140 for a 4-year license in Texas to get a CHL, and it is approximate, and it's $200 in New York. They're the only place that's actually more expensive. There is another place that's $150, but it goes for more years than Texas does. And was that the last question?
That was the last question.
All right, we're going to share one more video, and I've got a few minutes. You guys are going to get out of here earlier.
I remember.
Can you pause it real quick? Thank you. But I want to share with you this is the work of Pro-Life Texas. This video we worked for a long time on. Actually, that's the head of the THSC, the Texas Homeschool Coalition Watchman right there. We worked for a while on this video. It's been seen by 40,000 people now. Bristol Palin shared it out last week. We're very thankful. But we wanted to give a face to those aborted. We wanted to do something different. There are great pro-life organizations in Texas. Texas Right to Life, John Seago is just become one of my dearest friends. We talk all the time. Their job is to get legislation passed. My job is to tell stories. In the next week, I'm going down, and I'm going to be interviewing. 2 weeks, I'm going to be going down and working on some legislation a little bit, but I'm also going to be going down interviewing many of our pro-life representatives. We're going to ask them why. Because it's easy. Here's another thing. If you want to, here's a good thing for you when you're talking to people that are trying to get your vote. If they just say they're pro-life and can't give you a reason or only try to give you facts, dig deeper. Because if you can get to their why, you'll also understand, you'll also know that you can trust them to actually to do that. You guys know Steve Toth? He was a representative last session, ran for Senate and lost. But he said to me, those most affected by abortion, men that are most passionate about abortion have been those most impacted by it. So ask people why they stand for life. That's what our next video series is going to do. This one's the one we just finished. It's called Stolen Moments. And then our next one, the big project I am working on, is about fatherhood. I'm really excited about it. It's called A Life Unlived. It starts at 43 years old. That's how old Roe v. Wade's going to turn. And it starts at a birthday party. And you see a young woman blowing out candles, and then going into the living room and sitting with her elderly father on the couch. And then they're looking through some albums, and you start seeing them go backwards through time. You see her and her husband having their first child, her and her husband having financial difficulty. It's her and her husband getting married. And then her in high school at prom, her in a grunge band in the 80s. That's going to be fun to film. Her in high school, her in cheerleaders and different things like that. Just going her life, live backwards in time. Until you get to the point where she's about to be born and you realize, instead of her being in a hospital, it's the father dropping his girlfriend off at an abortion clinic. With the tagline, "Men regret lost fatherhood." We do. Men regret lost fatherhood. Because we've got to start reaching out to our men. We have to. Most of the pro-life movement has been done to reach out to women, and that is desperately needed, but we have to reach out to our men. If any of you are interested in helping with those sorts of things, I'm trying to find Gideon's Army. I'm trying to find 300 people to donate $20 a month to Pro-Life Texas. That doesn't go to me. That goes to filming. That goes to parking at the Capitol. That goes to taking care of all the people. You'll see here the quality we're looking at creating. So if you're interested in that, because I'm telling you guys, we do not need a majority. You know, last session, they were like, 4 years ago is when we get the House. Then it's when we get the Senate. Then now it's when we get the White House we can do something. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not need the House. We do not need the Senate. We do not need the presidency. We need God to do something. Because God stands up and he says, I will be the one that gets the credit. 3 years ago, in the state of Texas, we had 46 abortion clinics. People forget that Roe v. Wade passed in Dallas, Texas. 3 years ago, we had 46 abortion clinics. Today, we're at 17, and that's with a Speaker of the House that says, I do not want to be called pro-life. That is not up to me. That is not up to Texas Right to Life. That is not up to Texas Alliance for Life. We cannot take credit for that. That is God's doing. And he's continuing to work. My generation is the most pro-life generation since Roe v. Wade. We are the most pro-life generation since Roe v. Wade. My generation will end abortion. We will see it come to an end. I pray you'll be part of it. And I pray you'll help me continue to tell stories like this one. Thank you guys for listening. Here's my final video.
I remember running into your arms.
I love the way you held me.
You tucked me in and told me you loved me.
You read to me till I fell asleep.
You cried at my graduation. You were so proud of how I was growing up.
Growing up is something I can only dream of.
I left the world without ever saying it.
I had a future.
I was robbed.
I was aborted.
I was aborted.
I was aborted.
Wait for me.
Wow. Jason, thank you. You know what? I just learned something. I'm 80 years old. Is that on?